are you?
Yeah, good. I'm glad we could connect, and I know that we've connect again and find something that we both resonate with, so that's been fun.
So I'll just give a little background. I met you online.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Joe is a IFS therapist level 3 and is one of the best friends of a friend of mine here in the community, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we met regardless of that, and then we just kind of reconnected in some community event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you shared that you are on a mission.
Yeah, I mean, currently I feel like I spent a lot of time working through my early childhood trauma, as most of us have. Can spend a lifetime, I think, working on that. And I feel fortunate enough to have arrived at a certain place in my journey. And IFS is something I think that we're both really passionate about and have found a lot of value in that as a map. And now I feel it's important to be of service and really give back and try to move towards how can I contribute to the evolution of our species and humanity and, be a force for good and just really try to lean into a purpose. And I think as we get older, that developmental stage of meaning and purpose, and it's definitely kind of coming online for me. So yeah, I'm really interested in supporting women and what they're about and their voice. I think our world needs a feminine perspective, a sense of care and compassion and nurturing and presence, and less kind of problem solving and logic and linear thinking. So yeah, it was fun to bump into you again, and we had such a sweet conversation around, this kind of, I think it was the Dharma triangle or something, the different components of victim and persecutor and whatever the other one is. But it was just interesting to talk about these roles that we get lost in. And we can kind of be really blended in those places and be lost in them for a while. And ideally, if we can step out of those roles and identities, we can start to relate to each other from maybe a bigger picture. So I don't know. That's my initial ramble.
Of course, it's welcome.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you have it on your side like
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay, cool. I have a thing where I get in this room and I have this part that's perfectionist.
Yeah.
Okay, no, this needs to be here. So
Yeah.
it always takes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the subjects we talked about in that community meeting was I feel like you are a truth seeker,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a truth seeker.
Yeah.
And what we kind of see happening is a lot of performance.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to hear about your experience around that.
I think that culturally we're very focused on achievement, and we've managed to equate our value as human beings based on achievement and performance. And I think it's significant or important to not see that as good or bad or right or wrong, but just that it's a limitation in our real potential we can do amazing things, and we have brilliant minds and the capacity to create genius ideas, but this kind of competitive nature of my idea is better than your idea, or what's underneath that, I think what's behind that performance is a sense of my idea has to be better than yours so that I can feel good about myself, that I have value and purpose. And what I'm interested in talking about and being with people is your innate value as a human, regardless of performance and achievement. And I think as long as we're having that conversation, that's great. But you're right. If we get very focused on performance as our value and worth, I think we can all feel a little bit lost. And you as a coach and me as a therapist, I think that we hear from people all the time feeling very alone and lost and scared and trying to do more. And it just triggers that part of us that wants to try harder and get somewhere. And it's a bit of a loop that we can get caught in. So I think if we can foster ways for people to settle into their innate value and worth and purpose that's separate from their performance and achievements, then I think we're on the right track. And I think, again, it points towards this more, maybe it's not really accurate to call it a masculine or feminine perspective, but I think the feminine perspective of nurturing and wholeness and supportive and love and compassion is the right avenue to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I can speak on my own experience with my business. I have an agency to help brands sell on Amazon, and I can clearly see what I made that mean at every step. For example, when I just started that thing, it was my direct line of self-value. I attached my value to it, right? Like, oh, I have this business, I'm making money, then I'm worthy. I'm worth it. I'm worth something. And then I was in a very toxic relationship, and then the business was my escape. So all of a sudden I work 14 hours a day on the business. So it's like, it's everything to me because it's my escape. And then, like, slowly and little by little, by doing this work, I started realizing how much value I'm attaching to the business, almost as if it's my identity. If it collapses tomorrow, then I'm worthless. Yeah. You know? And in general, I feel like I am a lot in the doing instead of the being. Yeah. Right? And I'm not making it wrong. I think human beings as a whole, they need something outside of them to make them feel valuable. Yeah. Probably because getting the message at home very young that they're not. So I think it's a sacred work to help people kind of see the innate value that they carry. Yeah. Just for being, just for like drawing air, you know?
Yeah, you're mentioning a couple things intuitively that I think are important. And one is our origin of where we grow up and the environment we grow up in, and how it's instilled in us being in relationship to our families or our communities or even ourselves, what's valued and what's not valued. And I think early on, this kind of performance achievement, you know, keeping up with the neighbors and status and is a competitive thing that's installed pretty early. And I think there's a lot of very real pressure to earn money and survive. And I mean, that's a real thing. So yeah, how do we like recalibrate? Again, I think we're both pointing to this idea of just coming back to something a little more grounded and centered within ourselves. And all of these kind of meditation, mindfulness teachers and within IFS or other kinds of modalities that point towards this inner innate sense of awareness and conscious presence and compassion and a source of love and being in your heart or being, you know, caring towards others, you know, the golden rule, like all of these things around being in relationship from a place of innate care and value of each other has just kind of been lost in the shuffle because we're all so stressed out by these survival needs of making money. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like chasing the dollars is become kind of necessary priority because it is expensive to like survive. So I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what the answer is, but I think that having conversations like this and trying to kind of find our way back to something that's deeper and more meaningful or something.
Yeah, the first thing that comes up for me is community. I know it sounds maybe like crazy, but if we were in communities and there would be like providers and doers and then like also people that are just being in magic. Yeah. It sounds like La La Land, I'm aware, but it's like, what if a house wouldn't be just like a man and a woman? You know, what if there was a way to have communities and everyone is not, for example, in a couple's, how do you say that? Like in a house with a couple, then most of the financial responsibility is going to be heavily on the men or both, and
Yeah.
they both gonna have to have a 9 to 5.
Sure.
But if there could be like a different structure to that, more people under one roof, or just, you know, buying plots, like plots, buying like, you know, lots and building for togetherness, living together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think maybe in the practical sense, that can be really something that we can reconnect to as human beings, because that's how it used to be, right? We used to live in communities.
Yeah.
And the strong would go hunt, etc.
Yeah.
But if we go back to reality, then yes, it's kind of not possible for everyone. I know that I'm holding all of this as one person, and I'm paying the price.
Yeah.
Literally, my body is paying the price.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, you're tracking the impact into your physical being of like doing it alone. And you're pointing to the necessity of being in relationship with each other and how that's an imperative right now for us to find our way back to some kind of community and connection, and not to be operating as individuals necessarily. So I think that's another thread that we're tracking, is this kind of individualism. And at some point along the way, I had a friend tell me, and I thought it was a good idea, that you might believe that the world is a place of limited resources and I just have to get what I can, or you might believe that the world has plenty of resources and there's enough for everyone. And I think depending on your baseline belief, and I'm a person that believes there's enough resources for all of us if we are smart about how we come together and be with each other in those places, then, you know, it all starts to sound like very like kumbaya and, you know, let's love each other and come back. But I mean, I think it's true that we've lost a thread of connection with each other. And so I don't know what the next iteration of how to be in community and how to like have all of our survival needs met and keep up with the pace of like progress. But I agree with you. We've lost the thread of community, and how to bring that back, I'm not sure. I like you're pointing towards this idea of like shared resources and ways to be in community where we're raising children together and we're supporting each other, and people have different ways of supporting the community and the collective as opposed to just thinking individually.
Yeah, and you know, this is one of the biggest polarities that I have, maybe, is that I'm choosing this life. I'm choosing to live in Austin, Texas, have the house, have the car, the business, while I know that there is a different reality out there where people are living in an island, for example, Thailand, Kopangan, and they're literally just being, just living, because it's so cheap and abundant, and they can just allow themselves to just go to the beach or party or, you know, meditate, and they have that freedom because the cost of living is like, it's like $1,000 max. So yeah, and then I'm thinking, okay, so what am I attached to, right?
Right.
And in a nutshell, to the vanity, right? I like my comfort. I like the car. I like these things.
Yeah.
In some sort of way, it's also giving me some self-worth, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that there are other people living in complete freedom in that context of community.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true. In my experience for myself, I feel like what's happened is the more I've kind of gone deeper into a way of like self-love and letting go of my own inner critical judgment narrative and softening all those edges within me directed at myself. And that has translated towards being less judgmental of other people and more caring and open and present with other people. So as those things have shifted, my need for like money and comfort has changed. I wouldn't say that it's gone, certainly. It still feels nice to wear nice clothes and have a nice meal, and all these things cost money, you know, I'm in an apartment that, it's a new building and, I like nice things. So it's a dilemma kind of, because there's a compromise, I think, at some point. So at this stage of my life, I'm like, well, how much do I really need? I just talked to, my accountant, and I've had some businesses, and again, I'm at a place where I can even think about these things because I have enough to be taken care of. But I'm like, what do I actually need for like retirement? And I don't know, that number has shifted. And I guess my point is my sense of what I need and my comfort level has shifted as I did just some personal work around learning how to love myself more and being less critical in judgment. Something shifted around what I needed externally for value. And I think that those things are related, And as my like desire and need for like things and money has kind of softened, because I do think that that's still there, it opened up some space for me to think of how I can kind of share the privileges I have and the access that I have. And so, I don't know, I think there's some mechanisms there that are all interrelated around self-worth, access to resources, my own sense of like self-love and healing, and then maybe where I am in my life and how I want to be in the world.
How do you want to be in the world?
It's kind of like you said, I've been so focused on being an individual and realizing that this is all about being in connection to people. So I'm really interested in collaboration, and I'm really drawn back to community in some way. I come from a big family. I think maybe it's instilled in me to like be around a bunch of people, and I miss that. So yeah, I've been on like an individual path. Who am I? Why am I here for so long? And some of those things are settling down, and I'm coming back to a sense of like, oh yeah, where's all the people around me that I love and care about? Reconnecting to my family and, establishing new friendships and connections here in Austin. So yeah, community feels really important, like you said.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like that's the missing piece for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it. Like I'm starting to really bond, like form connections that matter, and it's a beautiful feeling. So I totally get that. Also, when you have community, all of the parts of you that are like starving, for example, for a relationship, and starving for attention, starving, like you're getting some of the needs met, and it's super important.
And I think in relationship to other people, this whole idea of like projection and mirroring and attachment and all of those threads point to, how important it is to like be in relationship to other human beings, both for kind of healing wounds or getting what we didn't get before, or also kind of showing ourselves back to ourselves. Like I learn more about who I am and how I see the world in my relationships with other people, which informs like, oh, well, do I still want to hold on to that belief or carry that wound or hold on to that story? Yeah, so being in relationship can really help us kind of grow and better ourselves, again, which sounds a bit like self-focused in some way, but I think it's both. I think being in connection and also trying to just be a better human being.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think having agendas, like I have personal agendas, obviously. When I'm in connection to something, I want to get value out of it. And so that's not a bad thing that should be like, judged or something. It makes perfect sense that the connections in my life, they bring me value. And then if they don't, then I won't want it.
What feels like kind of your sense of purpose, or like what's driving you these days to pull you forward, or what's your deep interest in life right now?
Yeah, so I feel like all of this work that I've done on myself, which is even why I studied IFS to
Mm-hmm.
help others
Mm-hmm.
was that, I feel like a whole world was exposed to me,
Mm-hmm.
and like I have this certain path that's really helping me live life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to help other people kind of like identify their parts, like
Mm-hmm.
their multiplicities, their polarities, the way they're getting pulled without even noticing,
Mm-hmm.
because that's hurtful. That hurts,
Mm-hmm.
like wanting this but not knowing why, and not being able to make a decision, or just feeling bad about yourself, judging yourself all the time.
Yeah.
I've been through all of these loops, and I feel like I can help individuals,
Mm-hmm.
or I can help people to actually sit with their emotions, zoom out, see the system and how they operate,
Mm-hmm.
and create long-lasting change in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of divided, because on one hand I like the person I've become, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have zero tolerance to, like, let's call it bullshit, but on the other hand it feels very isolating, and it's very hard to find the people that are a match to me energetically, and it's an interesting place to be.
Well, yeah, as you start to watch yourself as a human being and sort through, I mean, IFS is a really good map to sort through these different dimensions of ourselves. This idea of multiplicity, and we have these sub-identities and different parts of us that carry beliefs or energy or thoughts or feelings or memories. And you can kind of look at the puzzle of that. And that process of looking at it, first of all, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people that aren't able to do that or aren't willing to do that. And that is a very lonely process, to look at yourself so deeply. And then wanting to be in community with other people that are willing to do that as well, which I think, this community that we met in and talked in recently here in Austin, and Hannah and Josh and just all the people that are kind of creating that way of connecting to each other. It's like, yeah, let's gather people that are really focused on sincere, authentic personal growth. But yeah, it's a lonely path, but we can all like do it together, make it less lonely, I think. And I think everyone has to kind of find their own way in some ways. We all have our own personal experiences and life challenges. But yeah, coming back together and really like supporting each other on that path, Have you found enough connection for the support that you're looking for, or what else are you looking for that would support you?
It's a good question. I guess more people on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about, more people on this path, for sure, like people that inquire deeply inside, and people that have high levels of attunement.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been carrying the people around me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a bad thing. I enjoy doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of my gift to attune,
Yeah.
to be in attunement to others. And I want to learn to receive as well.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, how many years are you in, like, doing this work?
So I came across IFS in 2016, and I've been in therapy for years and years and years, probably since I was 19. I'm 57 right now, so a while. And yeah, I think for a lot of us, it's like a lifetime journey that can happen in stages. Again, I feel really grateful to kind of like be where I am. And to your point of like resonating with people that are kind of in the same place in their own path that you are. I think here in Austin, this is something we talked about, where there's a lot of seekers here in Austin, and there's a lot of individuals. It feels as though people are interested in seeking and curious about it, but there's a hesitation in taking their own accountability and responsibility for their own work. And I think for a lot of us, it's really easy to see in other people what needs to be done, and that sense of projection, and then turning, doing a U-turn and looking at ourselves and saying, well, what's going on in me that's being reflected out here? I think that question points to what you're talking about. Like, can we keep finding more people that are willing to do a U-turn and look at themselves and say, how am I contributing to what I'm seeing outside of myself? And that feels like a very core value that I have, that I think that you and I were talking about, where it's great that people want to be involved in personal growth and even look at spirituality and what's happening, but it requires a level of discernment with yourself of like, how am I contributing to this? And I feel like that's the real work. So I hear you. It feels challenging to have that kind of conversation. I think IFS is such a great tool because it is about what's going on inside of me and how can I cultivate this idea of presence and care and self-energy and higher awareness with myself, be in relationship to myself. And learning that relationship inside will inform how to be in relationship to other people from that place. But that's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so spot on. And yeah, I think it's in every spiritual community, not just in Austin, but because we're here, that's our experience from the people. So yes. And I'm curious about how is it for you, coming from the therapy world, coming from IFS? How is life for you in relation to other people, dating? Like in your journey, like what have you noticed? Did you notice anything, like any judgment towards others or any? And I know you said, like, if, in my opinion, if I judge others, I judge myself.
Yeah.
So totally. But I mean, for me, it's messing up dating in a good way. But it's still, because I can see everything. So I'm curious how it is for you.
Yeah. Well, specifically dating. So I've noticed a lot of old patterns that show up when I'm dating. So, for example, I'm dating this guy right now where I'm seeing an old pattern of how I'm a very high touch person, and this is a person that there's a lot of physical chemistry with. And so I can see that, I'm really drawn to this connection because it satisfies a high touch need that I have and a sense of like connection. And the pattern is, in the past, I would say, well, that's enough. I'm just going to pursue and stay in this relationship because this is such a powerful connection that I have with them. And what's different now is I'm realizing, well, I want more from my relationship, addressing what we just talked about. I want to be in connection with someone who is interested in a deeper personal path, a deeper connection path. And if this is going to be my intimate partner, then I want to be able to like talk about those things and like explore those things together. And so I've yet to kind of like find, and maybe this is a bit of a unicorn search of like the person who can be both an intimate partner and also like an intellectual, spiritual connection partner. I mean, I'm hopeful that it's out there, but I think these patterns of compromising, and that pattern of compromising goes back to self-worth. I'm realizing that, I was doing that because innate in myself was this deep, deep, deep belief that I just want acceptance. I just want someone's attention. I just want someone's affection. And yeah, this is a pretty like vulnerable place because I'm realizing that installed in me early on was a sense that I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. And I deeply need and want someone outside to validate me. And that work is my own work. And so in doing that process, it's like now I'm awake to like, I can see this mechanism happening again in this relationship where I've met someone, there's all this chemistry, and I mean, he's a really great guy. And maybe there's some potential there, but the work of connecting to myself and healing that vulnerable wound of acceptance and validation kind of has to happen first, I think.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's really vulnerable. It's interesting. I feel like we're almost in the same spot. I just dated someone that had checked all the boxes for my wounds, but I I really struggled because I got that a core value of mine is someone doing this work,
Yeah.
someone in therapy or
Right.
someone exploring themselves.
Yeah.
And I have this starving girl inside that also thinks she's broken and not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep searching for people to validate me.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think like most of humanity has this pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And that's let's pause a second and just say that it's devastating
Yeah.
that most of us have this programming of not good enough, broken.
Yeah.
It's like we start as a clean slate. What happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for me, I was really connecting to what I need. And I was freaking out because I felt guilty to walk away from a good situation just because of that value.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, which I hope you're going to meet soon, he told me, Rachel, what if you know for a fact that you will never meet a guy that checks all your boxes and also gives you those high levels of attunement and also into spirituality and all of that? Like, what if you know that's not going to happen for you ever? My first instinct was to say, then I will settle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the more I sat with it, I realized that I would rather be alone than to be with someone that doesn't fully capture me as I want to be captured, right?
Yeah, right.
And yes, I mean, it is my work with myself. I'm the one responsible for my patterns. But at the same time, there are multiple pathways to solve trauma. And when your trauma is related to others, right, then you need that good experience. Like, you need that pattern interrupt, right? Like, you need to be accepted. You need to be seen. You need to be held, right? You need to have that, how do you say that? Like, fixed experience in order to kind of heal. So I can do all of this work, absolutely. And I think that for me, like, in relations to self-love, I don't feel it, but I'm acting on it.
Yeah.
So I will actively choose the self-loving things that I can do, even though I don't feel that self-love overpowering me.
Right.
So I found a lot of value in that question because that made me really think, like, will I settle? Like, how does settling look like?
Yeah.
And I think we both know, how does that feel like?
Yeah. There's a couple things I think that are really important with what you're talking about. And one is there's a certain level of conditioning through our lived experiences. And all of that evidence that informs our nervous system and our subconscious mind, this is how life works, that mountain of evidence lives inside of us. And we need new evidence that says life can be different. And cultivating those new relationships, that new evidence, that new way of being in the world, not just requires us to kind of look at these old wounds and try to find ways to take care of ourselves and do the work and be in relationship to ourself, self-love, but we need evidence in relationship to other people. And part of that is me understanding myself well enough so that I can communicate to another person. This is what I need. This is how I want to be held, nurtured, seen, loved. And there's a certain level of personal responsibility that I have in cultivating the new evidence of how life can be different. And so I think it starts with self-love. I think it starts with responsibility, maybe even radical responsibility, because I'm starting to kind of lean into this idea that I am 100% responsible for my life experience. And at some point in time, it's important for me to stop assuming that everything that happened in my life was like life happened to me, and that I can take responsibility for the impact of life, and then also responsibility for the beliefs and choices that I made about what that meant. And so IFS has been a great tool to go back and kind of restory, recreate truths and how I experience the world, and then bring that forward into my relationships now. So like with this guy I'm seeing, like maybe there's some potential here, and I'm trying some things out, I'm like communicating better, where I'm just like, hey, rather than spend our time XYZ, like, let's have a conversation, like I'm investigating, I'm trying new things, I'm trying to really like explore possibilities. And one of the questions in my mind that I sit with sometimes is like, what else is here that I'm not paying attention to? Because there are ways that my mind is tracking, old patterns and old mechanisms of how to do things. And I'm trying to just keep exercising this ability to notice, well, what else is here besides my pattern, So that's one thread. The other thread is this idea of being broken. And honestly, I feel like part of that has to do with these early belief systems that say that you're a sinner or you're wrong or there's something wrong with you, innately wrong with you. And I don't think that's true. I think that we're innately a joyous, loving, curious, interested child that like has this sense of like awe and wonder of the world and everything's magical. And we do need to like learn how to play by the rules and be nice to each other. And so, yeah, I mean, I think for me as a gay man, that mechanism of like something's wrong with you turned into like, I'm wrong. Who I am is wrong. And it was kind of this internalized weaponization of like my sense of who I am as innately bad or wrong. And I think a lot of us have something inside of us that communicates something's wrong with us, And I think it's really important to just be really curious about that and try to sense and feel, well, where did that come from? And what information outside of me communicated to me that that's true? And is it possible to kind of like revisit those decision points and arrive at a different conclusion? It's a bit of a ramble. I'm not quite sure there was.
No, that was perfect.
Okay, good.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
I see it with one of my patients. Can I talk like that about a patient without disclosing?
You could just say, yeah, you're one of your clients and reference, yeah.
So one of my clients, without going into detail, got the message from her parents that that she needs to do and not be to get love. And that's been playing in her life in such a cruel way and such a delicate way that you won't, some people won't even notice. Like it would be in their choice of men, choice of work, choice of clothing, everything, like everything.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that it's really magical to go back to that scenario and bring love and compassion to it. Because if you as an adult can identify that you are worthy and you are loved, and you can be proud of yourself where your parents weren't, that's powerful.
Sure.
That is to change the narrative.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's another reason why I think it's important to really celebrate women for just their innate beingness, because I do think culturally there's an additional layer of objectification and beauty standards and, a sense of your bodies. And, I think as a gay man, I have a certain lens in me that is tracking the male gaze. And there are ways that I'm like observing myself, judging myself, critical of myself in my appearance and my body, and this kind of like, prioritization of like appearance and beauty and youth. And I don't know, there's something there that I think our culture has magnified, that I think women are, subject to, that intensifies this level of value and worth. And again, this kind of points back to a reason why I'm kind of sincerely interested in like, well, what do women have to say about their experience, and how can we really deeply listen to what they're learning about these different structures outside of themselves that are communicating to them all these messages. And I think all these external messages are what we're talking about. How can we look at all this external information about how to be a human being and change it? Yeah.
Something I can share is that when I was younger, like I think 19, I got silicone implants in my breasts, boobs. I don't know what's less in your face to say, but like I got them because I had a voice in my head saying that no man will want me unless I have boobs, right? And it wasn't just a voice. I had two men, like basically say, one just shared their preference. That was when I was like 19, and when I was in middle school, like I don't know, like 13, someone told me, why don't you have bigger boobs? Just that, I got the message that, you know, this, what I am is not enough and I need to have the boobs. And that voice kept on like, you know, going on and on in my head about getting the implants, and I ended up getting implants. 10 years after, I had a medical complication, had to remove them. That was last year. And mind you that once I got the implants, that voice disappeared. Wow. And I was at peace. 2 days after surgery of removing the implants, the voice was back.
Wow.
But because I'm doing IFS, I'm like, holy shit, like, who are you? Hi there, you know? And it's been crazy. It's been a journey because, yes, there's a lot of double standard, right? Like, be yourself, be natural, don't do, like, fillers, don't this, don't that. But on the other hand, like, you're being rejected for not having all these artificial things, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's been a struggle, and it's been really, I'm going back and forth on like understanding that the boobs didn't necessarily get me love, which is what I eventually want, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a double standard, and it's really hard to be a part of this world. Like if you're not born beautiful, then you're screwed. Yeah. It's done for you, like.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, such a powerful example because it highlights how much power we've given this kind of masculine lens as an authority of what's valued and what's not valued. And that's a huge mistake. Secondly, you're pointing towards an example of how your own mechanism in your mind of discerning how to belong is weaponized against you. Like this voice in all of us that helps us determine, how do I belong, fit in, be a part of the tribe? How do I navigate my behavior so that I'm not rejected, so that I can have intimacy, connection, and love, belonging? It becomes informed by a bunch of rules that are completely made up. And I think religion does that. I think our culture does that. And I think it's an important conversation to really have and dig into, is what is informing this mechanism in me that's discerning what is right or wrong for me. And I think that's a very, very vulnerable place to investigate. I think IFS does a really good job to kind of like discern, oh, I have this part of me that created all these beliefs and stories, and you can track where and when and who and how that voice in your head was informed and kind of unburden those beliefs in some way. But wow, such a powerful story, because at different stages of your life, just really being informed about like how to change yourself. You know?
And if you want to change yourself, where is it coming from? From self-love or from, just deeply wanting to be loved?
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
Or accepted, right? With religion, I can see how, sometimes you're born into a family cell and your only options are to believe like specific things in order to get love from your parents. And it's harsh.
Yeah. I think it's important for me to say that recently I was on a podcast where I felt like as I was speaking about religion, it almost sounded like what I was saying is religion is bad. And what I'm actually saying is, I think that when religion communicates that you're innately a bad person, I think that's wrong. I think that's a wrong message. If religion communicates that you're innately love and communicates how to be in connection and foster care and love for each other, and that's great. I mean, I think that that's the whole point of religious values, are foster a relationship to who you know yourself to be as a being in relationship to something outside of yourself that you may not understand, that could be bigger than who and what you see yourself to be, but is there. And, and to me, where I'm landing kind of in my own kind of spiritual path is all of life around me, has this kind of aliveness of nature and people, and it's beyond my comprehension to understand what all that means, but I am in relationship to this aliveness outside of myself. And there's an aliveness in me that resonates with that and attunes to that. And so if religion helps foster and help me understand my relationship of my aliveness to this external aliveness and how it's reflected back to and from itself and within me, that's great. All this other stuff, I think, is a problem. So being in connection, going back to this idea of community and fostering connection and care for each other and trying to survive, the daily task of raising children and educating ourselves and like feeding each other and our families and survival. Yeah, it's a difficult task, but I think that some of these core values of love and connection and self-care and a little less judgment in the world would be nice.
I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, religious for itself. I mean, when I say religion, I mean when you believe in something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
That would be my definition.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I see as bad is people killing in the name of religion, or people like, in the Jewish religion, there's a lot of shadow, a lot. Like they have habits or like things that they do that don't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be raised in a house where I was given a choice. My dad was like, this is religion. If you want cool, no. And I just went with what felt right for me, which was no. But I think that a lot of the values, for example, the value of family, connection, they can all still exist in the disguise of religion. But yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, I heard a little bit of Hannah's story and a little bit of yours, and it's really intense.
Yeah, I think, again, this idea of me taking radical responsibility for my life, I'm realizing how I made decisions myself around what was true and what wasn't true. And what's interesting is those are beliefs and stories that I've carried for a really long time. And I'm starting to kind of get underneath all of that and see that, my parents did the best they could. They're lovely, kind, loving people, and they were informed by their own religious beliefs about what's right and wrong. And as parents did their best to like teach me what they thought was true. And I think it's a freaking hard thing to be a parent. And yeah, at some point I have to be an adult and make my own decisions. And I'm grateful that I have a bigger understanding of all that now. I can see how at some point in time I internalized all those beliefs and then used them against myself. Like I was saying earlier, there's a way that this discernment mechanism in our minds gets kind of weaponized. And I think from what you and I are talking about, like there's a way to reverse all that, IFS is a great tool. I think a lot of these mindfulness practices and ways of paying attention to, I have something inside of me that's noticing and observing and aware, and like, I can watch my thoughts, I can watch my breath, so this kind of conscious observer dimension of us. And then I think our bodies are very significant in like an energetic kind of aliveness, or a sense of like expression is another dimension of us. And we're all just trying to figure it out, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be your advice to someone just starting out on their path of this self-discovery.
Yeah. So learning that I am a multiplicitous being helped me realize that I'm not just one thing. I'm not just my thoughts. I'm not just, my beliefs or thoughts or energy or feelings or memories. So that lens, I think, was really helpful to start to look at, I have different dimensions of myself. Finding relationships and people that not just want you to be who you are, but almost like are really encouraging and welcoming you, of like, show me more of who you are. This kind of unconditional love and acceptance, I think, is what we all need externally, outside of us, in relationships, to feel loved and cared for. Part of my path was also a sense of finding belonging. So communities, connections, relationships where you can feel you belong, that you can trust people, that you can learn how to trust yourself, ways you can learn how to love yourself more. I think self-love is pretty massive. And then just noticing inside the ways that you might be critical or judgment of yourself, and be curious about, well, where did that come from? Who taught me that? So those are just some things. We talked about this innate feeling that we're broken. And I wrote a book, From Broken to Badass. And I think that my whole intention in that book is to understand that innately we're all good. We have these kind of survival mechanisms and protective layers and different thoughts and beliefs and patterns that can help us kind of survive and make it in the world to a certain extent. But at some point in time, they're going to fail. They're not really going to give us this deep, innate sense of worth. And so it requires a bit more of a spiritual path around, well, who am I? Why am I here? And how do I develop this sense of self-love? And like you said, coming back to community, finding your ways back to connection and people outside of you that can foster that sense of we're not alone, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of it. It's beautiful. I had one more question. Let me think. What is your perspective on this perspective of, rewiring your subconscious mind and like just think positive thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
And when you notice that there's a negative thought, then have the discipline to change it to a positive one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about all this stuff out there right now that's really taking front and center?
Yeah. So my sense is who I am innately is not my mind. I am not my thinking. That my mind is a mechanism and a tool for understanding and meaning making. But what drives and what's behind my mind is an essence of being that is not cognitive. So my whole point in saying that is all of these thoughts and beliefs and ways to navigate the world through decision making and meaning making, I think, are super, super important and valuable. But I think it's also important to get a sense of who you are other than your thinking, because I could talk to you and we could go on and on about how we think the best way to live our lives and all the behaviors and ways to take care of ourselves that make sense. And then I may or may not do that. And then so am I a terrible person because I'm not like eating right and exercising and waking up at 8 a.m. and like I think this idea of behavior and thoughts and the right way to do things is valuable, but I don't think it's everything. So, I think that we are beings constantly in motion, and there's a way to navigate the world that requires adapting. And if I were to say I need to wake up every day at 7 a.m. and eat these 5 things and exercise XYZ. If I create a life that feels very regimented, that's not going to work for me. But the opposite is also true. I don't think I can just wake up every day without a plan. So I think there's a balance. I think that the meaning making and the mind as a tool for structure and ideas is important. But I also want to make room for a little bit of magic and mystery and connection, and not be so attached to my schedule that I don't pause and notice what else is happening in life around me, like in that gathering that we had, and just sitting next to people and talking to people and being sincerely interested in like, hey, what's going on with you? And where are you? And what's up? And I think having enough space in your life for there to be flexibility and the unknown and just potential for something magical to happen,
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to voice?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of bases.
Yeah, it was a lot in a good way, in such a good way.
Yeah. I really just appreciate you inviting me to come and spend some time with you. And I just love opportunities for us to have a conversation. And I appreciate that you're doing that and just inviting people in and checking what's going on in there and finding out what's going on in people's minds and bringing that to other people. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you for coming here. It felt really good.
Yeah.
Get to know you better. And
yes.
Looking forward to reading your book, which is about to drop.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Amazing.
Rachel.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Joe.
Yay.